Hello everyone and welcome back to another session on reading comprehension. आज का जो passage हम करेंगे that is coming somewhere from the field of sociology and a little bit of it may have some elements of psychology and political science. Let us read the passage further. Today there is a crisis of trust in science. Many people, including politicians, publicly express doubts that the validity of scientific findings. Political ideology is seen by many researchers as the main culprit. The sociologist Gordon Goshett has shown that political conservatives in the United States have become more distrusting of science, a trend that started in the 1970s. And a swath of recent research conducted by social and political psychologists has consistently shown that the climate change skepticism in particular is typically found among those on the conservative side of political spectrum. So what are we talking about in these 3-4 lines? We are majorly talking about the fact as to how people have started showing their distrust in science and who are majority of these people. Majority of these people are politicians, and we've also been given a very specific example as to how umpteen research has been conducted on or by the social and political psychologist that has consistently shown that climate change skepticism is some sort of doubt. In particular, it's typically found among those on the conservative side of political spectrum. So people who are there in the very conservative side of the political spectrum are basically challenging or questioning or showing their doubt related to climate change as a particular thought process. However, the same research has observed that the effect of political ideology on attitude towards climate change has found that political ideology is not that predictive of skepticism about other controversial research topics. So basically, when we are talking about climate change, that time we can see that the political ideology is dominating the attitude. But whereas in the other areas of research, the predictive skepticism of the political people or political ideology is not that skewed. Work by the cognitive scientist Stephen Lewandowski, as well as research led by psychologist Sidney Scott, observed no relation between political ideology and attitudes towards genetic modification. जब climate change की बात आई, तब तो हमने देखा कि उसके और पॉलिटिकल आइडियोलॉजी के बीच में रिलेशनशिप है, लेकिन जहां ही हमने जीन्स के बारे में बात किया, जहां हमने जेनेटिक मॉडिफिकेशन के बारे में बात किया, वहां पे we realize that there is no relationship between political ideology and attitude towards genetic modification. Lewandowski also found no clear relationship between political conservatism and vaccine skepticism. So there is more that underlies science skepticism than just political conservatism. But what? It is important to systematically map what factors do and do not contribute to science skepticism and science distrust in order to provide more precise explanations for why a growing number of individuals reject the notion of anthropogenic climate change or fear that eating genetically modified products is dangerous or believe that vaccines cause autism. But what are we talking about here? We are talking about the fact as to why is it that a growing number of individuals are accepting a couple of notions, rejecting the other notions, and 3 examples have been provided to us. People can be skeptical or distrusting of science for different reasons. Whether it is about one specific finding from one discipline, that is, the climate is not warming, but I believe in evolution, or about science in general. Science is just one of the many opinions. In our recently concluded research, we identified 4 major predictors of science acceptance and science skepticism. So what are the 4 major parameters जिसके basis पे आप बोल सकते हो कि science को acceptance मिलती है या science को लेके लोग skeptic होते हैं? सबसे पहला, तो आपकी political ideology decide करेगी कि आप science को accept करते हो या reject करते हो. दूसरा आपका religion, तीसरी morality, and चौथा आपको science के बारे में पता कितना है. These variables tend to intercorrelate, in some cases quite strongly, which means that they are potentially confounded. That means confusing. To illustrate an observed relationship between political conservatism and trust in science, might in reality be caused by another variable. For example, religiosity. When not measuring all constructs simultaneously, it is hard to properly assess what predictive value of each of these is. So basically हो सकता है अगर मैं genetic modification के बारे में बात करूं, genes के बारे में, genetic modification के बारे में, मेरा religion बोलता है genes को tamper करना गलत बात है, तो मेरी religious ideology की वजह से कोई भी research जो है which is revolving around genes, मैं उसको reject करूं. That is what they're stating here. So we investigated the heterogeneity of science skepticism among samples of North American participants. We provided participants with statements about climate change, genetic modification, and vaccination. So these are the three parameters that were provided to the participants. Participants could indicate to what extent they agreed or disagreed with these statements. We also measured participants' general faith in science and included a task in which they could indicate how much federal money should be spent on science compared with various other domains. So basically, some sort of a research is going on. These are all the examples that are given to us. We assess the impact of political ideology, religiosity, moral concerns, and science knowledge, measured with a science literacy test on participants' responses. The only form of science skepticism that was consistently and more pronounced among the politically conservative respondents in our studies was not surprisingly climate change skepticism. Skepticism about genetic modification correlated strongly with science knowledge. तो उनका जो response था वो सिर्फ climate change से related को doubtful नहीं थे. They were also doubtful related to genetic modification. Why? Because probably उनकी science की knowledge जो है बहुत restricted थी. The worse people did on the science literacy test, the more skeptical they were. यानी कि जितनी कम नॉलेज उनको साइंस की थी उतना ही ज्यादा डाउट उनके मन में जेनेटिकली मॉडिफाइड फूड को लेकर था. वैक्सीन स्केप्टिसिज्म हैड नो रिलेशन टू पॉलिटिकल आइडियोलॉजी but was strongest among religious participants with a particular relation to moral concerns about the naturalness of vaccine. If I'm a very religious person, I would probably say that I don't know what are you injecting in my body, because my religion says that I should not let anything that is not natural be put in my body. So basically, वो सारे examples हमें दे रहे. A generic trust in science was by far the lowest among the religious. यानी कि जो religious थे, उनका trust नहीं था साइंस में. जिनको साइंस लिटरेसी टेस्ट में जो फेल हुए या बहुत गंदा काम किया, वो साइंस की जेनेटिकली मॉडिफाइड फूड को लेके उतने ही ज्यादा कंफ्यूज थे. The really orthodox participants were also least positive about investing federal money in science. So basically, what is the passage talking about? The passage is talking about कि साइंस को लाइक करना या डिसलाइक करना शुरुआत में पॉलिटिकल स्पेक्ट्रम के हिसाब से बताया है. उसके बाद 4 कॉन्सेप्ट्स बताए हैं: पॉलिटिकल आइडियोलॉजी, रिलीजियोसिटी, मोरालिटी एंड नॉलेज अबाउट साइंस. एंड देन समवेयर वी आर कंक्लूडिंग द पैसेज बाय टॉकिंग अबाउट कि जिनकी साइंस की नॉलेज कम थी वो जीएमओ फूड्स को अप्रिशिएट नहीं कर रहे थे. जो बहुत रिलीजियस थे उन्होंने बोला कि वैक्सीन जो है बेकार चीज है. जो हद से ज्यादा ऑर्थोडॉक्स थे उन्होंने बोला कि फेडरल मनी जो है वो साइंस में नहीं जाना चाहिए. So these are all the opinions that are related to some sort of a predictive behavior of skepticism related to science. Let us look at the questions now. What is the main idea of the passage? Very easy. What are we talking about in the main idea? We are predominantly focusing on a specific topic related to science across the political spectrum, right? So if you look at option number A, research into religious conservatives' views on climate science is helpful in understanding today's science skepticism of the right. Out of scope, contemporary political divides generate disputes over the legitimacy of science theories, including climate change, genetic engineering. कोई dispute नहीं है, आपस में नहीं लड़ रहे हैं religion वाले लोग या skepticism वाले लोग या political ideology वाले लोग. They are not fighting within them or among themselves. Across the political spectrum, people tend to accept or reject scientific theories based on pre-existing beliefs. What was those pre-existing beliefs? Political ideology. It was my religion. It was my morality. And somewhere, it was also What was the fourth factor? It was basically my knowledge about science. Skepticism towards science crosses partly lines and poses a challenge to climate change and genetic engineering and vaccination. ये तीन चीजें जो हैं, ये merely as examples दिखाई दें, right? So we are basically talking about कि किस तरह से हमारे belief system जो है चार constructs पे dependent है: political ideology, religion, morality, and somewhere at the end we are talking about the level of science. So the correct answer for question number 1 is option number C. According to the passage, there is a direct correlation between all of the following except. सबके बीच में correlation है. Except political ideology and climate change बिल्कुल correct है. मैं कौन से side of spectrum, political spectrum में हूँ, that will decide कि मैं climate change को लेके positive हूँ कि negative हूँ. Science literacy and attitudes towards genetic modification. जिनका साइंस लिटरेसी में स्कोर बहुत कम आया, वो उतने ही ज्यादा स्केप्टिकल थे रिलेटेड टू जीएमओ फूड्स, तो ये भी करेक्ट है. A genetic trust in science and knowledge of science. There is no generic trust. ये डायरेक्टली जो है कैटेगोरिकली हम लोगों को एकदम ऑपोजिट बात बोल रहे हैं. क्यों? क्योंकि यहाँ पे ये बोला है कि जिनका एक जेनेरिक ट्रस्ट इन साइंस था, they were lowest in religion, and जो highest in religion है, they are going to be lowest in science. So this is going to be the correct answer. Religiosity and vaccine hesitancy, ये भी पैसेज में क्लियरली स्टेटेड है, तो इनके बीच में डायरेक्ट कोरिलेशन नहीं, इसका एक इनवर्स रिलेशनशिप है. सो द करेक्ट आंसर फॉर क्वेश्चन नंबर 2 इज ऑप्शन नंबर 3. Science is just one of the many opinions given in the fourth paragraph. According to the passage, the above remark is most likely uttered by. ये किसने बोला होगा? It's just one of many opinions. अब ये जो है हमारे को पैसेज में किस चीज के बारे में बोला है? We have been told in the passage कि science is one of the many opinions that is there, है ना? और ये किस रिगार्ड में बोला था? पैसेज में ये बोला था कि जब हमारे अंदर एक जेनेरिक ट्रस्ट होता है, तो ये जो रिलीजन वाले लोग होते हैं, इनके अंदर सबसे ज्यादा कम होता है, राइट? एंड देन वी हैव बीन टोल्ड कि इन्होंने ही स्टेटमेंट दिया था कि साइंस इज जस्ट many of the opinions. So what were they trying to introduce? There are other opinions. Science उनमें से कोई एक opinion है, right? क्योंकि जो religious लोग थे, उनका सबसे कम trust जो है science में था. And उसका example भी हमें दे रखा है. They never wanted or they were very skeptical related to any sort of a vaccine because they were probably not very happy about the fact to inject anything unnatural into their bodies. So person belonging to political right, जो political right वाला person है, वो क्या बोलेगा? वो many of the opinion नहीं बोलेगा, वो या तो right spectrum में होगा या left spectrum में होगा. वो कहीं पे भी ये नहीं बोलेगा कि ये एक many opinion है. A person who has little knowledge of science, जिसको little knowledge of science है, उसका हमने क्या बोला था कि वो GMO foods में जो है बहुत ज्यादा लो स्कोर करेगा. जिसको नॉलेज ऑफ साइंस कम है, वो GMO फूड्स को बिल्कुल नहीं अप्रिशिएट करेगा, तो उसका इससे तो कुछ लेना देना. अब रिलीजियस पर्सन एब्सोल्युटली करेक्ट, क्योंकि रिलीजियस पर्सन के हिसाब से उसकी बाकी चीजों को लेके और ज्यादा ओपिनियंस बहुत स्ट्रांगली फिक्स्ड हैं, लेकिन इस पर्टिकुलर चीज को लेके, राइट, जहां पे हम लोगों को बोला था कि दे probably to what extent are they going to agree or they are going to disagree, and very categorically the people who were very religious, they said no to any sort of thing that was related to the moral concern about the naturalness of a vaccine. So ये सारी चीजें बोलेगा कौन? ये of course वही इंसान बोलेगा जो कि बहुत ज्यादा religious है and जिसका least interest है साइंस में, वही ये चीज बोलेगा. A morally upright person. एक morally upright person का साइंस से कुछ लेना देना नहीं है. Morally upright person सही को सही, गलत को गलत बोलेगा. So the correct answer again for this question would also be option number 3. Which of the following statements can be deduced? When we are talking about deduce, that means which of the following can be inferred from the passage. A says a growing number of people in the US are turning to political conservatism since 1970s. This is incorrect because we have been told that they have become distrustful of science. We've not been told that they have turned to conservatism. हमारे को सिर्फ इनका ये जो डेटा दिया है that is related to distrust of science. Right? तो वन तो नहीं. Vaccine skepticism is likely to be present among people who do not subscribe to political conservatism. कहीं ना कहीं हम इस चीज को समझ सकते हैं क्यों? क्योंकि जो पॉलिटिकल कंजर्वेटिज्म है, राइट, इसका कोई रिलेशनशिप नहीं है, क्योंकि दीज पीपल हु हैव सेड अबाउट द वैक्सीन स्केप्टिसिज्म, they are not the people who had any sort of a political conservatism. They are the people who have certain doubts related to the naturalness of the vaccine, and they are the people who are moral. And you can probably say that they are the ones, who have certain concerns with morality. And that is, again, because of the religious participation that they have. तो ये कहीं ना कहीं एक religious वाला ही है जो vaccine skepticism दिखा सकता है, and not a person who is coming from a political conservatism. Makes a lot of sense. Increasing distrust about science is a major cause of increasing climate skepticism. बिल्कुल भी नहीं, ये रिवर्स बता रहा है, राइट? यहाँ पे ये बताया है क्लाइमेट स्केप्टिसिज्म क्यों है, बिकॉज पीपल डू नॉट बिलीव इन साइंस, दे क्वेश्चन साइंस. A particular scientific finding may be rejected by people for different reasons at the same time. Where in the passage can we infer this particular thing at the same time? हम लोगों को ये बोला different reasons हो सकते हैं, लेकिन एक सिंगल फाइंडिंग को एक ही टाइम पे सारे लोग रिजेक्ट करें, ऐसा हमने कहीं पे भी डिड्यूस नहीं किया. हाँ, 4 टाइप के लोग जरूर हमने बोले हैं जो चीजों को रिजेक्ट कर सकते हैं ऑन 4 डिफरेंट पैटर्न्स ऑफ बेसिस. So the correct answer is option number 2 for question number 4. Now this passage was pretty recent and pretty easy. And if you come across a passage like this, जहाँ पे कहीं ना कहीं little bit of elements of philosophy दे रखे हैं या एक social thought के बारे में दे रखा है, but कहीं ना कहीं कुछ technical words दे रखे हैं like climate change, science, GMO food. Overall, इस टाइप के passage को आप कर सकते हो क्योंकि ये बहुत doable होता है, right? That's it for today. So in the next session, I will see you with another interesting passage. Till then, keep reading.